it would be absolutely Cristiano Ronaldo. And I looked at his goal breakdown and thought of, he can score with his left foot, his wrong foot. He can score with his right foot. The headers, which Ronaldo scored 4 or 5 times more, Ronaldo scored probably, I think, 30-40% more with his wrong foot, and he scored more penalties. So it just took me to a point whereby he was more complete in terms of the big end of the most important part of the game. And then to a point of the last point, which I think is the most important thing that tips it over the edge even more, is that international record of the most international goals ever. The fact that he's won 5 Champions Leagues with teams that aren't as good as Messi's team. You know, the Ballon d'Ors are very similar. Messi's won more league titles with that Barcelona team. But I just feel that the international goals record and the Champions Leagues, aligned with the variety of goals that he scores, even though they're very similar, takes me to think that he is the greatest football player of all time.
He's managed to have this debate all by himself.
No,
listen,
no one's not a huge fan.
There is something almost impossible about what Kylian Mbappe just said. Not because it was controversial, not because it was outrageous, but because in a world where the Messi versus Ronaldo debate has divided football fans for nearly 2 decades, this man managed to say something that made both sides nod their heads at the exact same time. And if you know anything about how fierce that rivalry between fanbases truly is, you understand just how rare that moment actually is. Mbappe is not your typical voice in this conversation. He is not some pundit sitting behind a desk who watched these two from the stands. He is not a journalist who covered their careers from the outside. He is someone who actually shared a dressing room with Lionel Messi at Paris Saint-Germain, and someone who grew up idolizing Cristiano Ronaldo to the point where posters of the man decorated his bedroom walls. He watched Ronaldo from a distance and absorbed everything. He trained alongside Messi and absorbed even more. When Mbappe speaks about these two players, he is speaking from a place that almost nobody else on the planet can speak from. That combination of experience, that direct personal connection with both men, is what makes what he said land the way it did. Because here is the thing. The debate itself, at its core, has always rested on a lazy foundation. One side says Messi was born gifted, that everything came naturally to him, that he was touched by something divine and simply floated through football doing things nobody else could do. The other side says Ronaldo built himself from the ground up, that he dragged himself from nothing through sheer force of will, that every trophy and every goal was the product of sacrifice and relentless dedication. And both of those narratives get repeated so often in so many comment sections and barbershops and football debates around the world that people started treating them as facts rather than oversimplifications. Mbappe was asked about the debate recently in between his preparations for the World Cup, and instead of dodging it or giving some diplomatic non-answer, he actually engaged with it honestly. He said he played with Messi, he played against Ronaldo, and that they are really different, that there is really everything that sets them apart. But then he went further. He pushed back on the entire framing of the debate in a way that was direct, clear, and almost impossible to argue against. He said that the idea of Messi being all talent and Ronaldo being all hard work is something a person who has never played football in their life would say. He was blunt about it. Without being condescending, those were his words, but blunt nonetheless. And he was right. Think about what it actually takes to become the greatest player in the history of the sport. Not just good, not just elite, the greatest. You do not get there on talent alone. Talent without discipline gets wasted every single day in academies around the world. You see it all the time. A 14-year-old who makes everything look effortless suddenly disappears before he ever reaches the top level because he never developed the work ethic to match his ability. Talent is the starting point. It is the raw material. But what you do with it, how many hours you pour into it, how many mornings you wake up early and how many evenings you stay late, that is what determines whether you go from gifted to legendary. Messi was working hard from the time he arrived at La Masia as a 12-year-old boy, injecting growth hormone into his legs every single night just to keep pace with his dream. That is not a boy who was handed everything. That is a boy who fought for it from an age where most children are still trying to figure out who they are. The talent was obviously there. Nobody is denying that. But to look at that career, those thousands of hours of training, those moments of precision under the most suffocating pressure, and reduce it to natural ability is to completely miss the story. And then on the other side, Ronaldo was not some talentless worker who manufactured himself into a great player through effort alone. He had pace that defenders could not live with. He had a left foot that could bend a ball in ways that required genuine technical gift. He had an instinct for goal, a sense of timing in the air, an ability to read crosses and angles that cannot simply be drilled into someone through repetition alone. The work ethic is real and it is extraordinary, and it absolutely deserves every bit of credit it gets. But the idea that there was no natural talent underneath all of that work is equally absurd. What Mbappe identified is the trap that both fan bases fall into when they try to defend their player. In trying to make one seem more impressive, they end up diminishing the other in ways that are just not accurate. Messi fans sometimes lean too hard into the genius narrative because it sounds more romantic, more poetic, more like something out of a story. Ronaldo fans sometimes lean too hard into the self-made narrative because it sounds more inspiring, more human, more like something the rest of us can aspire to. But the truth, as Mbappe made clear, is that you cannot separate the two. Both of these men have both, in extraordinary quantities. That is what makes them the standard. That is what makes every generation of young players look up at them and understand that there is no shortcut. You need the gift and you need the grind. One without the other is never enough at that level. Mbappe knows this more intimately than almost anyone because he carries both himself and has walked the same corridors and training pitches as these men. The fact that both sets of fans are agreeing with what he said tells you everything. Because deep down, if you strip away the tribal loyalty and the years of back and forth, most football people already know this. They know Messi worked. They know Ronaldo had talent. The debate was never really about that. It was always about something else, something more emotional, something that goes beyond statistics and trophies and arguments about who was technically superior. It is about identity and connection and who you fell in love with when you first started watching football. But on this specific point, on the question of whether either of these legends relied purely on one or the other, Mbappe closed the argument as cleanly as anyone ever has. And he did it not from a place of trying to be diplomatic or avoid controversy. He did it from a place of genuine experience and genuine respect. He has seen it. He has felt it. And now he has said it in a way that even the most stubborn fans on both sides cannot easily dismiss.